You know, Uncle Doug,
Uncle Mark.
ever since God made Adam out of dust and then made a lady friend out of his rib, there have been people.
There have been, yeah,
There have been people.
for better or for worse.
And sometimes
Mostly
more,
worse.
sometimes more, sometimes less. But
The jury's out on whether that was a good call or not.
still, they are still deliberating. So occasionally there's people of note other than Adam and Eve to meet.
Bullshit.
And I think that I know they were the best people. They were the first fruit lovers and snake friends on Earth, and I think we should salute them for that.
Can there be a children's show called Fruit Lovers and Snake Friends?
I'm sure Tammy Faye thought of that first. So now that we've concluded that they were the best people, let's talk about some other people.
If we must.
And Uncle Dan has some people to meet.
Yeah,
in
we're
our
gonna
neighborhood.
we're gonna have a showdown.
Yes.
We're gonna have a knockdown, drag out fight.
Yeah.
On our hands here. So let me first introduce you to Randall James Hamilton Zwinge.
He was the inventor of the Zwinge.
The Zwinge.
Which was a door hinge and a kitchen sponge.
And both at the same time.
Yeah.
It's good because you can just close your dirties into the door and
Didn't move a lot of units.
No. This is Zwinge. Anyway, this is a man born in 1928 in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He is now better known as the Amazing Randi, conjurer and prestidigitator and escape artist.
An all-around good guy.
That may be debatable to some, but
Yeah.
I've met him a number of times, and he is a delight. He
Yes.
is just he is the diminutive
Yes.
man who
Tiny, wizened, magical homosexual.
yes, indeed,
Yes.
all of those things.
That's what I aspire to be.
A man who one of his greatest tricks, in my estimation, is the length of his eyebrows, which is astounding.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen pictures of him lately.
That's how Houdini died. He wasn't looking, and he walked
Strangled.
into his eyebrow.
Strangled by Randy's eyebrows.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. As a kid, young James Randi, as he's now known, dropped out of high school and joined the carnival as a carnival conjurer, as a magician, and a mentalist. He did a bunch of mentalist work, which is sort of like mind reading tricks.
Yeah.
Made a name for himself as a magician. Even posed as an astrologer for a while in a tabloid rag.
An escape artist, too, right?
Yeah, very famous for some of his escapes, including one where he was helicoptered over the Niagara Falls hanging
straitjacket, I think?
hanging by his ankles in a straitjacket,
Yeah.
and then freed himself from the straitjacket. So yeah, he made quite a name for himself. But during his early years as a magician, he worked in the UK, he worked in Europe, Philippines, Japan, and he would witness people claiming that they were doing real things. Now, of course, his contention is always that magicians are kind of the most honest
Liars.
They tell you they're going to lie to you.
right? And then they do.
Right.
And that's an honest way of doing it. But he kept seeing these people who were like doing, claiming that they were prophets or whatever, and just doing mentalist tricks, just
Right.
doing a standard, trick that
Pick a card kind of stuff.
well, or rather, everybody write something and put it into this envelope, and I will predict what all of these envelopes say.
Oh, gotcha.
There's a lovely, a very easy trick called a one ahead that he would see people do and claim that they were psychic or whatever and convince people.
Right.
And I
So
think
being dishonest, basically, pretending that it was real.
right, doing the same tricks, but instead of saying I'm doing a trick,
Yeah.
saying
This is real.
I'm
Right.
actually psychic and I can do this stuff. So he eventually became so was very disturbed by people believing this shit.
Right.
And became a debunker, and became one of the more famous debunkers. Really famously taking down a guy named Uri Geller, who was a guy who was studied by some university professors who were convinced that he had
telekinetic. power, right?
powers.
Could move things with his mind.
Could bend spoons with using just his mind. Could move things on the table.
Yeah.
Could do all this stuff.
If you've never heard the term spoonbender,
Right.
it refers to a charlatan, and it kind of comes out of the Uri Geller universe.
Yeah, and there was this whole thing, especially in the 70s and 80s, it became this thing to like convince people that you could do these magic tricks, that you had telekinetic powers.
Yeah, I used to see him on the Tonight Show on Johnny Carson
Right.
show. Yeah.
And famously, James Randi was consulted with. Johnny Carson had Uri Geller on the Tonight Show, and James Randi said, "Okay, look, if you're going to have him on, that's fine. Just make sure that you provide
all the stuff,
all of the props. He can tell you what to provide, but you provide them, and you make sure that nobody touches them until they're brought in front of Geller at the moment."
Right.
Well, without prepared props, guess what happened? Suddenly, Uri Geller's powers failed him.
He was having an off night.
He had a bad off night. They cut to commercial. He wasn't able to do anything. They cut to commercial. They come back to him. He is defeated.
Wow.
And he just claims, of course, that like somehow the powers didn't work that day.
Yeah.
So one wonders why he would have gone through with it. I mean, why wouldn't he like, well, I missed my flight, I couldn't make it. If because he knew that he was faking it. He knew that he was going to be presented with props that weren't his, so he knew it wasn't going to work.
It turns out that almost every time, and Randi has proven this over and over, you can get access to the props. Almost every time you can find a way to do it. And so what he wasn't counting on was just that
they were secured and he could never get
Randy had prepared the Tonight Show so well.
Wow. Right.
And it's one of the cringiest things you've ever seen.
Yeah, it's pretty cringy.
You cannot watch this.
Yeah.
My butthole got so tight it went inside out for a minute. I don't even know what
I can't
that
remember.
means.
Was Randy sitting there too?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, he was
Not in that show.
and Geller didn't know that Randy was involved, right? Or did he?
No, not then. But then, Randy sort of made a name for himself as a debunker.
Right? Yeah.
So let's take that, put it on hold. And Randy did a whole bunch of other stuff as a debunker that was amazing. But I'm going to put Randy on hold and introduce you to one Mr. Peter Popoff.
Yes.
The second contender
PP
in our
three Ps
showdown.
Yes.
Peter Popoff, born in occupied Berlin, West Berlin, in the 40s, in 1946.
So this is kind of Hedwig's origin story.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And I'm guessing that Popoff also had an angry inch. He emigrated with his family to the U.S., where he grew up. He attended college here. But his father was a preacher, a revival preacher. And Popoff himself was sort of brought into the family biz, saw how the whole thing worked,
Yeah.
and was billed as the Miracle Boy evangelist. He began making appearances as a preacher as a very young person, and was sort of put on the marquee as someone who could do faith healings and had powers, including foretelling the future, all of this sort of stuff.
Right.
He began doing his own thing sort of in the 80s and became a televangelist.
Yeah, boy, that was the right decade to get in on that.
No
get
doubt.
on that hay wagon.
Yeah,
right?
TV preaching had not really been a thing much up until that, or at least not entertainment preaching.
Right.
And that's what Popoff did. And Popoff's big specialty was he would heal the sick.
Yep.
And he did this by knowing magically what ailments. He would call people by name, random people, not plants, from the audience.
Yeah.
And he would heal them.
Yeah, out of a stadium, out of a large arena.
A big group of people, and he would just be able to know, okay, over here in this left section, Selma Johnson, are you over here? And she would stand up, and he would
You have
say,
a problem with your kidneys.
yeah, exactly. I'm reading that the Lord's telling me something about your knees. Are your knees troubling you, Selma? And she, oh, yeah, the knees. Oh, my God, how do you know this? And then he would, scream and yell and hit her in the head, and she would fall down, and then she'd be cured.
Yeah.
And that was his big shtick.
I'm sure he never did any amputations, though, right?
So here we've got in one corner the amazing Randi, professional skeptic and debunker.
Yeah.
And in the other corner, Peter Popoff, professional, apparently healer of the sick and
mind
boy,
reader.
and reader. Well, and guy with conduit to Jesus Christ who would tell him how this all worked.
That's right.
Now,
and that's the end of the story.
And that's the end of the story.
Good job,
two
everyone.
guys.
Moving on.
Let's leave it at that. Popoff was weird, man. If I was doing his shtick, the one thing I wouldn't do is get real specific about things. Because one of the things he would do is be like, it wasn't just, hey, I know your name and your ailment. It was, I know your name. Now you live at 1422 Angel Crest Drive. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that to me is the big giveaway.
Yeah, that's
because
a tell.
People would walk into his revivals and they'd ask them to write down on a card what's your name, what's your address, and what's your ailment.
Yeah.
Hello.
And how?
Yeah.
And you'll tell how the game worked.
Yeah.
But how did they not know?
Yeah. If you're Selma and he's like, hey, Selma, how could he have possibly known my name?
Right. And
Right.
ostensibly it was to get on his mailing list.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and also somehow you were supposed to write your section and seat number.
Yeah. Well,
with your ticket on it. So that
your ticket had your section and seat number. So they had that association. You didn't have to write that down.
Right.
They had that association.
Gotcha.
Right? I mean, it's probably one of those things where it's like two halves of the ticket, and you write down your stuff on the ticket or whatever.
Right. So Randi smelled a rat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy to smell a rat with a faith healer. Period.
Yes.
They're all rats. Oh, spoiler! Shit. Sorry.
Fuck.
They're all
There goes
charlatans.
My next career move.
Right. Exactly. But this guy,
Uncle Mark touching your butt for Jesus.
this guy had this special trick where he could there's no way he can before a show memorize all of these cards. You know
Of
what I
course
mean?
not.
He would do
and addresses and
he would do 15 or 20 of these people in a night. So
Right.
how is he doing it? So Randi sends some people into his shows, and this is a fun thing. Like, he sent some people into the shows, and one good way to debunk this, he sent in a man dressed as a woman,
Yeah.
and then wrote on the card that she had a uterine problem.
Yeah.
And then she was magically cured of her uterine cancer or whatever.
And given a penis.
Right. So, we knew that he was a charlatan because the Lord wouldn't have told him that a fake woman has a problem with her uterus.
Right.
So we already knew that. But how was he doing the trick was what James Randi wanted to find out.
Right.
And somebody noticed at one of these shows that he had a hearing aid in one of his ears.
Right.
Well, in the 80s, plenty of people had hearing aids, but there wasn't a lot of like now we'd all be like, okay, you got a communication device. Like, we've all seen
you got
Mission
an
Impossible.
earpiece.
We know what's happening. But back then, this wasn't quite as pervasive an issue or a technology. So, but how do you prove it? So Randi set up hired a private investigator, whose name I have written somewhere. Alexander Jason.
Yeah.
Who was an electronics expert, among other things. And they set up a scanner that would scan the airwaves for a frequency that wasn't normally in use, but that lit up. And they got lucky because this is not a perfect. This was not a great technology at the time. It's pretty basic stuff, Radio Shack type stuff. But they found it. They caught, on some. It was funny because Randi later called it, that's the frequency that God speaks to you on, whatever megahertz.
On some shortwave frequency.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
1060 AM is God's frequency.
Right, exactly. So they catch this. So the scanner lands on a thing. They hit record and hear these sort of footsteps with high heel footsteps, and then up to the mic you hear this female voice going, hello, Petey, I love you.
Oh, man.
I hope you can hear me, because if you can't, you're in trouble. And then she launches in.
I hope this never shows up on Dateline.
Right, exactly. Suddenly, it's his wife's voice.
And Omarosa busts them. That woman is amazing. She's in the right place at the right time.
Always.
Yeah.
Always and forever. No, so Randi manages to catch her feeding him all of these lines. And they've got the video from his TV show, and they line it up directly with the audio of his wife just feeding him. Nope, look to your left now. She's coming down the aisle. Okay. And he would just, Alice Jones, are you here? Alice, oh, come on, Alice. She's got pancreatic cancer. You've got pancreatic cancer. She needs, and blah, blah, blah. And this was his shtick.
Wow.
So he's exposed.
Yep.
Randi goes back onto Randi, finds the proof, pieces it together, then goes back onto the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Reveals it all. He's gathered all of this evidence. He reveals it all in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's the end of Popoff's career.
Was it?
Psych! If you believed that, you haven't been paying attention to our show. As we all know, people are the dumbest.
Yep.
No.
Both Geller and Popoff still are out there in the ether, are they not?
They are.
Yeah.
They are, because you can expose the trick, but when people want to believe a thing,
Yeah.
God damn, do they want to believe a thing.
Yeah.
So, and Popoff didn't just use this trick. Popoff used other tricks. Like, for instance, this is delightful, seating someone in a wheelchair.
Right.
This is your seat. And then magically raising them from the wheelchair, and look at how well they can walk now.
It's really funny.
Oh, my God.
So
I have 17D, but it's a wheel. Just sit down, okay?
just sit.
Sorry.
That's your chair.
Now dance.
And, if you have problems with your knees, they would sit you in that, and they would be like, you have problems with your legs, you're healed. And then they'd walk all around and dance for joy, because you don't want to, make the dude look like an idiot right then and there.
Yeah.
There's too much pressure. So he had lots of tricks. He just had to get rid of the earpiece, and then there was still plenty that he could do.
Rubes. There was still plenty of rubes to...
Yeah, so he did declare bankruptcy sort of right after that. And guess who he called on to help him with his bankruptcy? The rubes.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Help me with, oh my gosh, we've been destroyed by evil
Yeah.
atheists out to get us.
The enemies of Christ.
Right. Satan is out there fighting us. We need to save ourselves.
Right.
That's depressing.
Send your money.
Yeah.
And by the 90s, he was back up and running again. So there you have it.
Yeah, in fact, I think John Oliver in one of his takedown pieces had a back and forth with Popoff, right? Say, send me $1,
maybe.
we'll send you this.
Oh, did he do that seed?
The constant, yeah,
the
seed-
Church of Perpetual Exemption or whatever it was?
Right, the seed money is you
Right.
have to send him the seed money. Then they send you 7 pieces of cloth.
Right.
Then you send them $4 more, and they send you some cooking oil, and then you send them.
Well, and
it went on for
and
50 correspondences. Or
Yeah.
something.
Popoff had this amazing thing where he had miracle water,
Right.
that was bottled at the same spring that saved people who lived at Chernobyl.
Oh, good.
He literally talked about this.
No.
There was this pool of water that all of the other that was blessed by Jesus, and all of the non-Christians died, but the Christians who made it to this pool that was blessed by Jesus magically survived. This water will save you from anything, and he sold that.
It was called Geiger Springs.
It was exactly.
Yeah, so Randi did the Lord's work. He definitely made a dent in these two guys. But
Here's the trick: doing that work, people want to fucking believe, and that's the
people
thing.
want to show.
That's the thing that we all need to be cautious of. Is that when the exposure happens, we all want to believe that everybody will wake up and go, "Oh shit, the emperor wasn't wearing clothes."
Right.
But we have to understand that every time the emperor is exposed,
there's just another frequency to turn the knob to.
there's a whole bunch of people who are just like, I still see clothes.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
and I will give him my money.
So I guess what we're doing here is useless.
It's all useless
Like
and
Randy.
worthless.
Like
James Randi. He. This is the same guy who posted a reward of $1 million if you could prove in laboratory conditions that you actually had any kind of psychic ability. If you could, like, he opened it to so many psychics, astrology, all of these different
Telekinesis.
anything. If you can, if we can agree on some basic, and plenty of people took him up on it. Like, we'll agree on some very basic laboratory conditions.
Yeah.
You know, I remember one. He had a show for a while that would do this, and I remember one where there was a British psychic who was in consultation all the time with the police. She would go to the police and help them, quote unquote, find the thing.
Right.
And what he would do is he had like a whole bunch of implements, a hammer, a pickaxe, a this, a that, a thing, and just say, you know, find the one or more of these may or may not have been used in a crime, in a murder.
Right.
You know, use your psychic ability and pick it out. And she would pick up a thing and say, oh, you know, she'd pick up a hammer that they had just bought at a hardware store.
Right.
And, oh, this, I feel glass. This was involved in glass. I just feel glass. I don't know how. I don't know what it was, but a glass. And then she'd go to another thing.
Boy, what a lead.
Right. Great. Fantastic.
I feel like there was a nail
I feel...
somewhere.
She picked up a fireman's axe, which had actually been used in a murder, and was like, I got nothing. So, like the point is, like, The point is firemen are murderers. That's what Dan is trying to say. The point is there are psychics who are millionaires, but not from proving their psychic abilities.
Right.
But yet, tell that to, you know, go and watch An Honest Liar, go and watch any skeptical movie or whatever, and then tell that to your friend who believes in the Long Island medium, and you will get exactly nowhere.
Yeah. But you will enjoy the movie.
Yes, indeed.
You'll enjoy Randy. He's a lovely man.
Well, we try anyway.
Did I ever tell you guys that I opened for James Randi? No. Or rather, he opened for me, surprisingly. I don't know. Me and Frank from Thank God I'm Atheist were asked to go and speak at a skeptical convention.
Yeah.
And strangely, we were put after the keynote of James Randi.
Oh, funny.
Which was weird. Like, we were sort of the closing goofy comedy duo or whatever. Which we're not comedians, but we were billed as that. Anyway.
Not funny, anyway.
We're not funny. That's for sure. You're off the show.
That's my job.
You are fired from this show.
That's my job.
Anyway, it was very fun. I got to open with the line, I'd like to thank my opening act, James Randi. The amazing Randy. So anyway, that's the Popoff Randy incident.
Great story.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, let's move on. Yeah.